Hello everyone, today I will continue telling you the love story of the poor girl lytutien and CEO James. That afternoon, the office was almost empty, the last rays of sunlight stretched across the floor, painting streaks of golden orange. As Diep was gathering a pile of documents, she suddenly heard a faint call from the gate. A frail woman stood there, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sunken yet filled with pleading. Beside her was a tall, thin man, his face etched deeply with the marks of time. The woman's voice trembled. "Diep, my daughter." The sound tore through the air like a knife. Diep froze. Since childhood, she had lived with the truth that she was an abandoned child, raised within the cold walls of an orphanage. She had never once imagined who her real parents were, sometimes even comforting herself that they had died, just so her heart wouldn't ache anymore. But now, two strangers stood before her, claiming to be her parents, plunging her mind into chaos. If James had been there, he would surely have pulled her behind him, laid a warm hand on her shoulder, and reassured her. But James was in Cambodia on business, leaving her to face this storm alone. Diep felt her legs rooted to the ground, her heartbeat pounding so hard it nearly suffocated her. In the days that followed, they patiently tried to draw closer. They spoke of years of poverty, of reasons why they couldn't raise her, of the pain they claimed to feel when abandoning her. Their words poured into her ears, but instead of healing, they only reopened old scars. She remembered the long nights of her childhood, silently burying her face into the pillow, asking herself if she was ever worthy of being loved. Each time she heard the word daughter, her whole body shivered. To her, that word carried no warmth, only chains dragging her back into the dark void of the past. By day, she forced herself to appear calm, speaking to them as though they were distant visitors. But when night fell, her small room became suffocating. With no James to confide in, she sat by the window, staring at the blurry streetlights through tear-filled eyes. She asked herself, who are they really? Why now? Should I open my heart, or should I turn my back forever? Memories of abandonment, muffled cries on freezing winter nights, the hollow eyes of children sharing her fate, all came flooding back, leaving her sobbing uncontrollably. She had no James to lean on, no one to share the burden. In the darkness, she felt herself shrink into the image of the little girl she once was, lonely, fragile, trembling in a world that seemed to have no place for her. And now, even those bound to her by blood brought no comfort, only reignited the pain she thought was buried forever. The torment grew inside her, gnawing at her mind, between the blood that bound them and the wound of abandonment. Which truth must she accept? In the beginning, Diep's parents appeared gentle, constantly speaking of love and their regret for having abandoned her. The woman, her voice trembling, said she had been tormented for years, that every night she dreamt of the child she had lost. The man recounted their poverty, the hardships so severe that they had been forced to grit their teeth and give up their daughter. Soft-hearted by nature, Diep sometimes wanted to believe that after all these years, they truly repented. There were fleeting moments when the word daughter made her heart quiver, as though the warmth she had longed for since childhood was finally within reach. But each time she looked into their eyes, something felt strange, unsettling, like a mist concealing secrets. And then, small signs began to surface. The man, who claimed to be her father, would often steer the conversation toward James. He pretended to take interest in the young CEO's business ventures, then began probing, where was James investing? How wide were his connections? He even sighed, feigning casualness, if only James would put some capital into a few of my acquaintances' projects, our family's fortune could turn around in no time. The woman was different. She masked her curiosity with motherly concern, asking Diep about every detail, how much her apartment cost, whether her car was a gift from James or self-bought, how much she had in savings. At first, Diep naively thought it was just clumsy affection from long-lost parents. But as the questions grew more pointed, and a calculating glint flashed in the woman's eyes, a chill crept up her spine. At first, she tried to brush it aside. Perhaps they're just curious, she told herself. After all, we are blood. It's natural to ask after so many years apart. But the questions became more blunt, the suggestions more blatant. Until one evening. Diep returned home from work, the room dark except for her parents waiting inside. The man calmly laid a stack of worn papers on the table, his voice stripped of hesitation. "You are our flesh and blood. We're struggling now, and you must help. Just speak to James, and everything will be easy." The words stabbed straight into Diep's heart. Her eyes widened, her hands trembled. In that instant, childhood memories crashed over her like a storm, the cold dormitory of the orphanage, nights crying into her pillow because no one ever came for her, the days spent watching other children being picked up by their parents. For years she had yearned for arms to embrace her, a home to call her own. And now, when they finally returned, what they brought was not love, but a trap. The silence in the room was suffocating. The woman lowered her head, though the twitch of her lips betrayed impatience. The man fixed his gaze on Diep, eyes cold and commanding. In that moment, Diep grasped the cruel truth: they had not come for repentance or blood ties, but for James. They saw in him an opportunity, and in her, a bridge to wealth and status. That night, Diep curled up in the darkness, tears streaming down her face. Never had she felt so lost. Some wounds, she realized, should never be reopened. And blood does not always mean refuge. Diep sat frozen before the stack of debt papers the man, who claimed to be her father, had placed in front of her. Shame and fury surged inside, yet her legs felt nailed to the floor, unable to resist. The man drilled his gaze into hers, his voice dry and cutting. "If you won't help, we'll find another way. James doesn't live alone, does he? Doesn't he still have his mother? Once we go to her and tell her everything from the past, she'll understand." The woman beside him nodded faintly, her eyes glinting with calculation. "You don't want James's family to know you're just the abandoned child left behind, do you? They've never fully accepted you. If this comes out, how do you think she'll look at you then?" Each word stabbed into Diep's heart like a needle. She recalled the times she had met James's mother, the scrutinizing gaze, the cold pride of a powerful woman. James had fought so hard to shield her from prejudice. Now, if these two dredged up the truth, that fragile trust could shatter at any moment. Diep trembled, her lips pale. She knew they had her cornered. James was in Cambodia, hundreds of miles away, unable to return anytime soon. And she, left alone, with no one to cling to. "Please, please don't." Diep's voice cracked as her hands clenched so tightly the skin broke. "Don't go to him. Don't go to his mother." The man smirked, a half-smile dripping with triumph. "Then you understand, don't you? We're not trying to make things hard. We just need a little help. For someone like James, this is nothing at all." Diep bit her lip until blood welled. She knew that if she gave in, she would become their puppet. But if she resisted, her secret would be exposed, the very thing she feared most. That night, in the pitch-dark room, Diep sat clutching her knees, tears soaking her face. For the first time in years of being strong, she felt utterly powerless. All she could do was wait for James to return, or find a way to escape this poisonous trap of blood and betrayal. In the days that followed, Diep tried her best to hide everything. In front of her parents, she endured in silence, gritting her teeth as she listened to their demands. And whenever James called from Cambodia, she forced a smile, lowering her voice to mask the fear inside. "Are you doing all right at home?" James's voice through the phone was both tender and weary. "I'm fine, really," Diep replied quickly. James listened carefully to every sound. He knew Diep better than anyone, strong, genuine, rarely one to lie. But the hesitation in her words, the slight tremor in her voice, this was not the Diep he knew. When he pressed further, she would only laugh faintly and change the subject, as if afraid he might uncover the truth. Call after call, James's unease grew heavier. In Phnom Penh, he spent many nights sitting quietly by the hotel window, the dim city lights casting the reflection of a lonely figure. Diep's strained smile haunted him, tightening something deep in his chest. At last, James could no longer stay still. He reached out to a few trusted confidants back in Vietnam. "Watch over Diep for me," he said, his voice taut. "She's hiding something. I need to know the truth, even the smallest detail. Days later, fragments of information trickled in. One person reported seeing two strangers frequently around Diep's place. Another mentioned she had been arriving late to work, her face drawn, dark circles under her eyes as though she hadn't slept in days. James listened in silence, his heart twisting painfully. He had never seen Diep like this. Then one night, the most important message arrived. Mr. James, we found out. Those two aren't strangers. They're Ms. Diep's biological parents. They showed up suddenly, stayed close by, and have been insisting on seeing her. The moment he read those words, James went still. His grip on the phone tightened, his vision darkened. Diep's stories came rushing back, her childhood in the orphanage, her longing for a family, the scars of abandonment. And now, the very people who had forsaken her returned, carrying with them not love, but an unknown agenda. James slammed his hand on the table, breath ragged, fury coursing through him like never before. He hated that Diep had to face this alone, hated that she didn't dare confide in him, and hated most of all that he was so far away, unable to shield her when she needed him most. That night, in the darkness of his room, James's eyes burned with resolve. Cambodia, projects, partners, all of it suddenly meant nothing. Only one thing remained in his heart: he had to return, immediately. This time, he would not allow anyone, even those who called themselves her parents, to hurt Diep ever again. That night, the rain poured down as if to tear the sky apart. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, casting warped, flickering shadows across the small room. Diep sat curled up on a chair, her shoulders trembling, hands clenched so tightly they bled. In front of her stood the two people she had only recently reunited with, those who called themselves her parents, yet their eyes were as cold and sharp as blades. The man slammed the table, the echo drowning out the storm outside. How much longer do you expect us to wait? Or should we go straight to James ourselves? Once his mother learns the truth, do you think she'll still accept someone like you? The woman tilted her head, her voice dripping with honey laced with venom. Daughter, stop resisting. Just persuade James, just one word from you, and our debts will disappear, everything will be resolved. For him, this is nothing at all. Each word cut into Diep like a knife. Her heart pounded wildly, her breath came in ragged gasps, fear closing in until her vision blurred. She knew that if they reached James's mother, it would all be over. That powerful woman had never fully accepted her. Now, with even the smallest excuse, the fragile bond between her and James could be shattered. In that moment of despair, the door suddenly burst open. A rush of wind and rain swept into the room, carrying with it a tall figure. James. He stood there, drenched, water dripping from his hair, but his eyes blazed like fire. Enough! His voice thundered, so powerful it seemed to shake the entire room. All three turned sharply. Diep froze, her eyes wide in disbelief. James, the man she thought was still in faraway Cambodia, was now standing at the doorway, his gaze fierce, brimming with fury. The man faltered, his brows knitting in confusion. The woman bit her lip, her face paling. James stepped inside, each stride heavy, echoing like hammers against the floor. He stopped in front of Diep, spreading his arms wide to shield her like an unbreakable wall. His eyes swept across the two figures before him, cold as ice. You think you can corner her? His voice was low, gravelly, but carried immense power. You think you can wield the past as a weapon, to threaten, to bargain? Hear me clearly, if you dare one more time, don't blame me for exposing your true faces to the world. The air in the room grew thick, broken only by the relentless pounding of rain outside. The man pressed his lips together, about to speak, but choked back the words when he met James's glare. The woman tried to form an excuse, yet the steel in his expression silenced her, leaving only trembling silence. Behind him, Diep sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Never had she seen James so fierce, nor had she ever felt so fiercely protected. In that instant, the wall she had built inside herself crumbled. Outside, the storm still raged, but within her heart, another storm had been unleashed, a storm of struggle, of faith, of love. James clenched his fists, his gaze cutting through the two figures like blades. His voice rang out, each word striking with the force of a hammer. "I've done my investigation. Don't think I don't know. You call yourselves parents, yet you abandoned her the moment she was born, leaving Diep to grow up in an orphanage, her childhood scarred and broken. And now, when you see her loved and happy, you come back, not to make amends, but to exploit her." The man flinched, his face paling, before snapping back in a strained voice. "Why, you're talking nonsense. We are her parents. Don't we have the right to look for our own daughter?" James's lips curled into a cold smile. "Looking for your daughter? Or looking for an opportunity? I've seen your debt papers. I've heard every whisper about property, about my money. Don't think you can fool me." The woman trembled, panic flashing in her eyes, yet she still tried to protest. "You've misunderstood. We only want to be close to her." James stepped forward, his voice hard as steel. "If closeness was what you truly wanted, you wouldn't have used debts and threats to coerce her. Love is not a bargain. Blood is not a ticket to trade. You abandoned Diep once, don't expect another chance to hurt her again." The air in the room froze. The man ground his teeth, his hands shaking with rage but powerless to act. The woman lowered her head, unable to meet James's eyes, knowing she had been unmasked. Behind him, Diep sat trembling, tears streaming endlessly. For years she had longed for parents, wished for the warmth of a family's embrace. But now the truth stood plain, that love had never existed. They had come only for the scent of money, for James's power. James turned, leaned down, and gently placed his rain-soaked hand over Diep's icy fingers. His voice softened, yet carried unwavering resolve. "You're not alone anymore. No matter what the past holds, I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." His words pierced the storm like a flame of warmth. Diep broke down, collapsing against James's shoulder, sobbing like a child for the first time. Outside, the rain still poured. But within that room, the truth had been laid bare, and for the first time, Diep saw a glimmer of light within the suffocating darkness. After being exposed by James, the room sank into a suffocating silence. The man clenched his fists, his eyes blazing, yet he had no words left to defend himself. He shoved the chair back violently, his voice dripping with venom. "Fine, James. Consider this your victory today. But do you think you can protect her forever? One day, you will pay the price." The woman quickly tugged at her husband's arm, casting a cold, cutting glance toward Diep. Then the two stormed out into the raging rain. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving an oppressive emptiness hanging in the room. James still stood as a shield before Diep, but once their figures had disappeared, he finally turned to her. He thought he had protected her, that facing them head-on was enough. Yet the sight before him made his heart twist painfully. Diep sat frozen, her shoulders trembling violently. Tears streamed endlessly, not from fear, but from a heart torn apart. The family she had longed for all her life was nothing but a mask of schemes. She felt as if she were falling into an abyss, with no foothold, no escape. "Diep." James called softly, but she didn't answer. He stepped closer, knelt down, and clasped her hand. Her small hand was ice-cold, limp, unresponsive. A sharp ache pierced James's chest. He had thought that strong words of protection would be enough, but now he realized some wounds could not be healed by words alone. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered, wrapping his arms around her. "I know you're hurting, I know you feel hopeless. But please, don't let the darkness consume you. Let me be here, let me walk through this with you." Diep buried her face against his shoulder, breaking down like a child abandoned. Her sobs blended with the pounding rain outside, long, trembling, heart-wrenching. James held her tightly, his eyes burning with determination. Diep's parents might return, might threaten again, but he swore he would never let any force, not even the past, destroy the woman he loved. That night, the rain did not cease. In the small room, one broke down, the other bore the weight of her pain. Together they braced against the storm, the first, but certainly not the last. The room fell silent after the door slammed shut. Outside, the rain kept pouring down in torrents, as if it meant to drown the whole world. Diep sat slumped in the chair, her shoulders trembling, tears soaking her sleeves. James sat down beside her, wrapping his arms tightly around her, saying nothing at first. He simply let her cry, let the pain that had been bottled up for years break free like a shattered dam. Every sob cut into his heart, yet he only held her closer, steady and warm, as if to pass his strength into her. "You don't need to force a smile in front of me anymore," James whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Cry. Let it all out. I'm here, and I won't leave your side." Diep sobbed, clutching at his shirt as if afraid he too might abandon her. In her despair, the strength she usually carried vanished. She was just a small, fragile girl longing to be protected. James gently brushed his hand through her hair, damp with sweat and tears, his gaze tender yet resolute. "Diep, remember this, those so-called parents abandoned you long ago. They have no claim on you now. You don't owe them love. You don't owe them your life. The only thing you need to hold on to is yourself, and us." Diep lifted her tear-filled eyes, red and swollen. She wanted to say something, but her throat choked, and she buried her face deeper into James's chest. That entire night, James did not sleep. He sat beside her, holding her in his arms. When exhaustion finally pulled her into slumber, tears still lingered on her cheeks. James leaned down and kissed her forehead softly, whispering like a vow. "I will never let you be alone again. No matter the storms, I'll be here." Outside, the rain kept falling without end, but in that small room, the warmth of his embrace burned like a flame, chasing away all the darkness.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện ở trên kênh mình. Như mọi người cũng đã biết thì thường thì kênh của mình sẽ lên những câu chuyện về các người mẹ đơn thân Việt Nam. Và mình cũng hy vọng là mọi người sẽ ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nhiều hơn để kênh mình ngày càng phát triển và vững mạnh hơn. Mọi người ơi, thì mong rằng khi mọi người theo dõi video thì mọi người cũng có thể để lại bình luận để góp ý cho các nhân vật cũng như là góp ý cho kênh của mình. Và nếu như mọi người yêu quý kênh của mình cũng như là yêu quý các nhân vật ở trong video thì mọi người cũng có thể thả tim ở bình luận hoặc là like video, và đặc biệt có thể chia sẻ video này đến những người khác mà mọi người yêu quý để mọi người có thể xem video này nhé mọi người. Và chúc cho mọi người một ngày mới thật vui vẻ và hạnh phúc. Mình hy vọng rằng có thể tiếp tục gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo. Chào tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại.